We are happy to have Professor Nicaise Ndembi, Deputy Director General of the International Vaccine Institute Africa Regional Office, to talk about the vaccine inequity, but also to see what is Africa doing to solve this inequity that is still a challenge on the continent. Professor Nicaise, it's a pleasure to have you with us today on the English News Bulletin.
My great pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Now, Professor, with the current gaps and challenges originating from not having enough vaccines on the continent, now the International Vaccine Institute is currently on the continent. But for those who do not know the International Vaccine Institute, would you briefly tell our viewers about the International Vaccine Institute, its mission and vision?
No, thank you so much for inviting me again. So the International Vaccine Institute was set to discover, develop, and deliver vaccines for global health. Very important. I think the role that we play really in the ecosystem is to be able to develop vaccine for priority diseases for global health. So during COVID, you all know what's happened. I think it's now all our memories. I think it's important that we avoid that by building an ecosystem ready to be able to support pandemic prevention, preparedness, and response. Very important. So the African Union set a target of manufacturing 60% of the vaccine by 2040, and there are about 8 bold programs that are involved including market shaping and demand intelligence, including research and development, financing, IP and tech transfer, regulatory systems, of course, again, talent development, infrastructure, and coordination. So IVI can support 4 of the 8 bold programs set by the African Union to have really self-sufficient. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Now, what makes IVI Africa Regional Office strategically important for the continent?
Yeah, I think that is important strategically. We are currently, the HQ is based in Seoul, in Korea. Then you agree, for those who know, we have an office in Europe, in Stockholm, and a country office in Austria. With the really commitment from the African Union and the momentum, the movement, and really building the ecosystem, I think it was important that we expand our footprint to be on the continent to support the 55 African Union member states to be self-sufficient in manufacturing, in this case, vaccines and other health products. So the regional office is well located, obviously in Kigali, to be able to support those member states. And currently there are several projects that will be involved, more than 100 projects in about 25 countries across the continent, and more than 2 tech transfer for the oral corona vaccines. And also we're working closely with African Biologics for the Rift Fever Valley vaccines. Those 2 are currently based in South Africa. We really want to expand it from really Kigali to first Rwanda as well, and other African Union member states.
Now, you also touched on something really important. Many remember the vaccine inequity exposed during the COVID-19 pandemic. Africa was limited to manufacturing capacity. It is still the problem. How is IVI going to close this gap, or to position itself to bridge this gap and help the continent prepare better for future pandemics?
No, so that's very good. The good news is I was part of the team from my office with the leadership of Dr. John Kengasson, at that time the director of Africa CDC. We came through a landscaping analysis to realization that we only produce 1% of all vaccines currently being administered on the continent. I think this is that was a very shocking funding. But now I think it's time to build, as I mentioned earlier, the ecosystem. It means that we need to build partnerships. And one of the most important things that I need to add on before I get into what IVI roles and contribution is that for each pandemic, now that was COVID, we have Mpox, we have Marburg that Rwanda successfully responded to. But for each of those, there's always an adaptation. It could be on the financing, could be on the partnerships, because the partners you build or you really set up during a course of a pandemic might be different from disease to disease, because not all partners are working on the same diseases. But that being said, I think you need partnerships. You need to play a little bit politics in terms of continent. Getting access to those commodities will require really strong leadership and political commitment and political will. You need people understand the reality on the ground. How do we even just get the vaccine to those people? We need policy on the ground to be able to do that. So we need to know the virus or the disease we are dealing with, or the pathogens. So IVI will come in the partnership component. And we can also shape policy, working with WHO, UNICEF, Gavi, and other stakeholders within the vaccine ecosystem. So one, we really, our approach is really to work closely the partners to build their capabilities. So I mentioned initially 2 vaccines we're currently working on, and I can tell you, I think we work with those partners from really co-creation, then resource mobilization, then implementation. So the technical really component that we provide technical assistance, actually we start building that trust from the beginning before even starting the technical component. The same will apply with African biologics that I mentioned around the Rift Valley. We developed a proposal together, we got funding through CEPI. Now we are moving into the implementation phase. That's the way we accompany our government. The same is being done currently with the government of Rwanda. We're working closely with the agencies, RBCs, RDB, the regulatory Rwanda FDA, and being sure that we are closely really engaging to be able to address the local need when it comes to local manufacturing. That's around really building capability, research and development as well, obviously mobilizing resources like financing I mentioned earlier, talent development. We're organizing a vaccinology course in September. Last year it was still in Kigali. Our aim is really to be able to build a pool of African scientists ready to be absorbed by the industry to move this needle from 1% to 60% by 2040. You cannot do that without R&D, without financing, without talent development, without IP and tech transfer. That's where IVI has come in and very strongly coming to support the government of Rwanda and other member states. That's why we are strategically located in Rwanda to be able to address those local needs for the continent.
Now, Professor Ndembi, it's now been several months since the signing of the host country agreement, which is Rwanda, and the official opening of the IVI Africa in Kigali. Could you give us a sense of what has been happening, what has been done so far, and what is in the pipeline, as you just mentioned, the scientists program?
Yeah, no, I think first, as a Pan-Africanist, I would say it, you need to understand your environment. Is very important. The first step was to understand who is doing what, engaging with the local authorities, meaning the key stakeholders, the partners that will be involved. There are a lot that has been done already in Rwanda. So coming in, we need to complement. We need to really bolster what's already been happening. So the first step was the mapping of the ecosystem, for a clear understanding how IVI can contribute to the wonderful job that's already been done. I mean, you need to engage with partners, including the government, really parastatals, including RBC, the government, Ministry of Health, as I mentioned, RDB that I mentioned earlier. So now, next step, the partners. Team Europe has been there for quite some time, doing a wonderful job across the different pillars of the ecosystem that I mentioned earlier, the GIZ, and other partners that have already been, Syllabi that you know very well, BioNTech has been there for long. So we're not coming or really starting from the scratch. We're coming to see how we fit into the ecosystem, be really a catalytic a partner to move really the needle, to support the government of Rwanda. So that was the first step, mapping, engaging with partners, which we have done. Now, the next now is we know where we can contribute meaningfully. from the regulatory perspective, with Rwanda FDA, we know how we can actually support the researchers in terms of really building or creating or supporting clinical trials, being sure that we strengthen the existing site across the country. You know, very working. FASAL is doing a wonderful job. The University of Rwanda and all those partners. I think that's very important. I think 5%. This is not only Rwanda now. 5% of clinical trials, all clinical trials globally, are happening in Africa. I think you can get the number from Rwanda. I think this is not enough. We need to be really position our clinical trial site really to be able to be competitive globally. There's a huge pipeline of clinical trials and diseases for biologics, vaccines, therapeutics, diagnostics. We need to prepare our site, working closely hands down with RBC to be sure that those sites are ready to be actually be attractive for the global health community. I think this is important. That's the very important step because you cannot manufacture if you don't do clinical trials, you don't do animal studies, you don't do research and development. So those are important. So you need to build that foundation. That foundational ground can only be built also if we put in resources. Domestic resources, international resources. It's important for sustainability and for ownership. I think Rwanda is well positioned to be able to do that. We're supporting and we're bringing really the technical expertise already happening from our European office, from the regional office to support the clinical trials ecosystem. I think you recall during COVID, we helped set up the site at Ibutare. So that's already, we started really engaging a long time ago. So that being said, we also going to have a large network of R&D institutions to be able to really work together in a very twinning mechanism approach, that hub and spoke model. And the secretariat is going to be based here in Kigali. We have over 50 institutions from 20 member states that have already been really contacted or really to be able to engage in that regional networks, continental network, to be able to support R&D and local manufacturing. I already mentioned also the talent development. We need to build capability from universities. How do we reshape the curricula to be able to be really the curricula of today to be able to address local manufacturing, science and innovation and research.
Now, beyond IVI, Rwanda also hosts the BioNTech. There's also the African Medicines Agency and more institutions that are in the health sector and are like working together to address this need. Now, how is IVI collaborating with these institutions, or how do you plan to collaborate with these institutions to bridge the gap, and what is the presence of these institutions in Africa's journey of sufficiency and sovereignty in the health sector?
I think this is where I strongly really commend the leadership, really the presidential level, ministerial level, head of agencies, really. I think this is a huge milestone for Rwanda. For those who can correlate a little bit what the implications are, look at the Silicon Valley, where it's really where innovation, science is happening. This is what things are happening currently. I mean, this is the revolution. We're talking about AMA, the African Medicine Agency. That's the regulatory body. Because what is going to be very important is that when we scale to 60% by 2040, the next question, Olive, will be, are these vaccines safe and efficacious? I mean, they made in Africa vaccines. We should be proud at some point we have strong regulatory bodies like the African Medicine Agency, the equivalent, for those who don't know, of the US FDA, the European EMA, all those really continental, really supra, regulatory bodies that are actually regulating drugs, medical products, health products that are being used in their respective countries or continent. I think that's what having AMA here is important. Africa CDC, we're already working closely with AMA, we've been working, and also engaging and being sure that the product, we can support some of the local manufacturers by providing the technical expertise IVI also covered some of the regulatory components, the training on the review of some of the dossiers from the R&D perspective, because we actually cover the entire ecosystem. So we better understand how we can provide the technical assistance to agencies like AMA. I think we're working very in a very cordial, respectful, and oriented way. So the second is APTF, is around technology transfer. As I mentioned, we really want to be sure that we start really from this continent, boosting or really having a robust R&D really platform to be able to develop research here, own IPs. And then you need people, we or agencies with experience and expertise around tech transfer. That's why APTF, being based again here in Kigali, can work synergetically with other institutions. The list can be long. Those are doing biologics, the foundations that are currently here based in Kigali. I'm referring here to the Susan Buffett Foundation, the MasterCard Foundation. That's really all contributing to that revolution and be sure that we build that ecosystem that will enable us to really be able to manufacture. Without that, making it difficult, because you need everyone bringing a piece on the puzzle, that puzzle to the table to make things moving. So IVI comes in. As I mentioned, we do epidemiology. From epidemiology, you have what we call evidence generation. From evidence generation, you can move it to laboratory, do discovery, research and development. We move some of the product, like the cholera vaccine I mentioned, the salmonella, the typhoid vaccines, and other vaccines that we're working on, to WHO PQ. I think that experience alone can actually help to support the AMA, can help to support APTF across the ecosystem that we really understand more, understand very well, in addition to the delivery, the vaccine effectiveness studies that are being conducted across the continent, cholera, mpox vaccine. So that's the experience, and then the engagement. Really, as I say, respectful engagement to other partners that have a very key role in the ecosystem that IVI is supporting from Kigali. Thank you.
Professor Nicaise Ndembi, thank you so much for giving us a detailed explanation of what the IVI is doing and what does this mean to the whole continent as it is working to solve these gaps in vaccine inequity. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Again, we really stand fully committed to support the government of Rwanda and again also the rest of the continent to be self-sufficient. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.